Hello ghouls and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Haley Adams, and if you like all things horror, I suggest you hit that follow button down below. Just give it a little tap. There we go, perfect, thank you. If you're a returning victim, thank you so much for crawling out of your graves to be here to watch my video. They really need to invent Wi-Fi enabled coffins. Today is yet another episode of Horror Chats, a show where I sit here and chat about horror movies. Makes sense. And today's topic is James Signorelli's 1988 film, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Yay! The movie follows Elvira, a network horror hostess who is just constantly mistreated and sexually harassed at her job. Women just can't catch a break. And one day the new network executive dude, whatever, I don't know, he's wearing a cowboy hat, gets a little bit too handsy, and Elvira gives him a what for and quits. Good for her. Well, it's fine that she doesn't have a job anymore because she is planning this big Las Vegas showcase at the Flamingo Hotel. Only problem is, to get this show up and running, she needs $50,000. But lucky for Elvira, right after she quits, she gets a letter in the mail saying that her great Aunt Morgana has just died and she was named in the will. Not knowing she even had a good aunt, let alone a great one, Elvira is ecstatic and thinks this is the perfect opportunity to get the 50 G's she needs. The only problem is she has to go to Falwell, Massachusetts to get it, so she hops in the macabre-mobile and off she goes. Well, problem is, Falwell, Massachusetts is about as prudish as prude can get. Actually, the only way it could get prudier is if it was a Southern Baptist town, but if that was the case, Elvira probably would have been shot on sight. The movie would have ended on a very quick and very tragic note, a lot like my last relationship, you know, it's okay. Chastity Pariah, who, that's a person, it's not an STD, played by the hilarious Edie McClurg, confronts Elvira the second she gets out of her broken down car, pretty much setting the tone for Elvira's entire stay in this crummy little town. You see, Chastity Pariah, she basically runs the place. It's never really explained why, but if you've ever met an old biddy, you know, they can insert themselves and be like, yeah, it's my show now, and everybody else is just like, yeah, alright. With her car having broken down pretty much the second she got there, that means Elvira has to stay in the town from Footloose for a little bit longer than just the will reading. So she gets a room at a B&B. Barely, they don't want to give her a room. You would think these people have just never seen a sexy woman before in their life, and they're all just like really jealous or weird or something. But she gets a room, and there is where she befriends one of the local teens named Robin, played by Ellen Dunnings, and Robin tells her basically the only place to go in town for a fun time is the bowling alley. God, how sad can this town get? Ugh. But that is where she finds herself that evening. Listen, this town is so repressed that Elvira can't even get a Bloody Mary past a certain time. I mean, and I thought it was weird that I can't even get liquor at the grocery store. I mean, come on. But she's not even in this bowling alley for 5 minutes before these two goons, played by Jeff Conaway and Frank Collison, come up to her and just, you know, start harassing the shit out of her. A hot bitch just cannot get a break, my goodness. Well, a full-on fight breaks out, because I guess these guys aren't above fighting a woman, and this is when the one decent adult in this town steps in, Bob, played by Daniel Green, and he knocks the goons out. So dreamy of him. Well, this pisses off Patty, the owner of the bowling alley, played by Susan Kellerman, and let me tell you, Patty is not a girl's girl, not even a little bit. Well, she has the hots for Bob, so she is not happy with the whole situation, but Bob and Elvira leave. They start to hit it off because he somehow has managed not to be brainwashed by these extreme prudes for whatever reason. You know, good for Bob. It's probably because he's a himbo, doesn't have a whole lot going on up there, but it's fine. They hit it off and things are looking like they might be alright in Falwell. The next day at the will reading is where Elvira meets her Uncle Vincent, played by William Morgan Shepherd, and he is just unamused by Elvira's whole deal because he's boring. Well, it turns out Aunt Morgana left nothing to her brother Vincent, left a decent amount to her chauffeur and her maid, and left the rest of her estate to Elvira. Sounds great, right? But the rest of her estate is an old house, a recipe book, and her poodle, Algonquin. Bummed about not getting exactly 50 grand, Elvira hopes at least this house is good enough to sell for a decent chunk of change, but turns out the house is completely in shambles. Now, if this was 2024 and you had just inherited this giant old Victorian house, no matter what state it was in, you could probably get like 700 grand for it. But this was the 80s and things were more affordable then, which meant Elvira was not making any money. However, her Uncle Vincent really wanted this recipe book. I wonder if it had like a good clam chowder recipe in it or something like that. So he offers to pay her 50 bucks for it. Seems decent for a recipe book, but then again, go to Barnes & Noble. That is pretty much what cookbooks cost. But God, inflation! That's not the point of the movie. He comes over to get the book. It's nowhere to be found because Gunk, the poodle, he's a very good boy and he has hidden the book. That'll come into play later. So Elvira's first night in the house, a couple of bonkers things happen. First, a couple of local teenage boys come and try to perv. They're little perverts. They come, they try to get pictures of her gazongas, because, you know, teenage boys, and clearly nobody has a Playboy subscription in this town. She catches them, and they write it off as saying they were going to come to see if she wanted help fixing up the house, because deep down these are good boys, even though they're a little bit nasty, but it is what it is. The next thing that happens is Elvira has this Hammer-esque dream sequence where she goes up to the attic and then just gets jump scared by an old woman. And I am not proud to admit this, the very first time I watched this movie, that lame little jump scare did actually make me jump because I was not expecting it, so good job. So the next morning, most of the teenagers in town show up to help Elvira fix up this house. The teenagers seem to like her, not only because she's a breath of fresh air, but she's finally an adult that they can just be themselves around. And also the boys like her boobies, you know, what can you do? But they spend the whole day fixing up the house, and in the end, it is painted many, many colors. Looks like something you would find on Bourbon Street, not Falwell, Massachusetts. But Elvira, being the campy queen she is, she loves it. She's thrilled. So boom, house goes on the market. The next day, a realtor comes over, and he tries to assault her. My God, woman can't get a break. And let me tell you something about realtors. I don't trust them. the camera gremlin was telling me not to say stuff that could get me sued, so we'll leave it at that. But anyway, she kicks the realtor out because he's skeezy. And then he blackballs her house, essentially. She cannot find a buyer for it, and she is again back to square one on how to get her 50 grand. So Elvira decides to get a job. Problem is, Chastity Pariah has told pretty much everyone in town not to hire her. What's this bitch's deal? I mean, come on. So nobody hires her. Feeling down on her luck, she's walking down the street and she runs into Bob again. Bob runs the movie theater, which gives her an idea to put on one of her midnight horror shows. So she and Bob secretly set this up, and they invite all of the teens in town who are not supposed to be talking to Elvira, but they like her, so they sneak out, they come. She has a great turnout, and in the end, she's going to do this big Flashdance ripoff, I mean, inspired number. You know, the one that's been parodied to death where she, like, pulls the water and then goes, blah. But Elvira is going to do it with gold glitter. Only problem is, Nosy Patty overheard all of this and hatched her own little scheme. So Patty and her pointy titties snuck into the theater and replaced the gold glitter with tar. She tarred Elvira and then feathered her like this is the 1400s. My God, Patty. Angry, Elvira and Bob head back to her house, and she gets all of the tar off of her by bathing in gasoline. Don't do that. Don't try that at home, children. Don't do it. She's pissed about the evening, but Bob's here, so she's hoping she can turn things around a little bit, and she decides to cook him dinner using her aunt's recipe book, which she found in the couch cushions, which is where Gonk hid it from Uncle Vincent. So she heads into the kitchen and whips up this strange recipe that she thinks is going to be making a casserole using her aunt's strange ingredients. Look, we can't all be master chefs. Like, it's okay. She's hot, so she doesn't need to be able to cook. But the result is this little monster guy that comes popping out of the crock pot, tries to attack them, and they fix the situation by shoving him down the garbage disposal. You know, like in Gremlins. I feel like I often say, you know, like in Gremlins. After that mess, Gonk promptly steals the recipe book and hightails it up to the attic. Deja vu, Elvira is back up in the attic. Well, he leads Elvira and Bob to this trunk. Clearly, he wants them to open it, so they open it. It's full with a bunch of witchy stuff and a letter addressed to Elvira. In the letter, it explains that basically she is descended from a bunch of super powerful witches, and she was sent to the orphanage as a baby to hide her from her Uncle Vincent, who is like this super nasty warlock, and he cannot get his hands on this recipe book, which is actually a spell book, by any means. So like, whoa, a lot of heavy news just dropped there, but learning she's a witch, Elvira is excited to do magic, so she's flipping through the little spell book. She sees a word that looks like moolah, thinks that means it's a money spell, and she tries it. Well, the result is a giant snake appearing. No, not a penis, you perverts, but anybody knows that spell. Eager to do more magic, Elvira sets her sights on the Morality Club's picnic the next day. Yeah, this town has a Morality Club. God, apparently that's based off a real thing. Weirdos. Anyway, she tries to whip up the same monster casserole creature from last night. So she has her little crock pot, she hides it on their picnic table, and she waits in the bushes to see what happens. Well, to her disappointment, when Chastity opens the lid, it appears to just be a normal casserole, and apparently a very tasty one too, because all of the old people in town, they start heaping up their plates. Well, turns out she did do something to that casserole. It starts making these old prudes real horny. Let me tell ya. Real horny. It's hilarious, and they start having a full-on orgy. Yeah, the Morality Club having an orgy. Well, it's all fun and games until Patty sets her horny little eyes on Bob. This leads to a fight between her and Elvira, where Elvira punches her titties clean off. Yeah, Patty's been stuffing the whole time. She's got nothing. Not that I'm one to talk, but Patty stuffs. When the townies come down from their debaucherous escapade, they have a town meeting about what to do with Elvira. Well, Uncle Vincent shows up, and he points out that witchcraft is still illegal in Falwell, Massachusetts. Like my brother in Christ, point the finger at yourself. Girl, what were you doing at the devil's sacrament, right? Hypocrite. Well, this leads for the town people to decide to throw Elvira in jail and burn her at the stake. Harsh, right? Jeez. They throw Gonk in jail too. What'd that little dog ever do to you? But it turns out to be a good thing, because Gonk is actually a familiar who can shapeshift. He turns into a rat to escape the jail cell, and he heads back to Elvira's house, where Bob is currently looking for the spell book to help get Elvira out of jail. Well, Vincent's two goons show up, they knock out Bob, tie him up. It's Elvira's job, guys. Come on. Well, little ratty Gonk, he chews through the ropes tying Bob up, and then turns into a Rottweiler. Yeah, this dude can just do anything. Gonk and Bob head back to town just in time to see them setting up the frickin' pyre for them to burn Elvira at the stake, and Bob is literally the only person doing anything to stop this. There's even little Girl Scouts set up with marshmallows to roast over the fire. Where are your morals now, Morality Club? But luckily, Elvira remembers her ring, which is actually her mother's magical amulet, and she uses it to make it rain. Actually make it rain, not like money make it rain. She tried that earlier, it didn't work. So Bob is able to free her from the ropes, and they're on the run. But Vinny, he is on the hunt, and he corners them, ends up chasing Elvira back to her house. There is this whole big magical fight. Well, girl power, she destroys him. He gets slurped down to hell, Sam Raimi style. We love to see it. And she wins, hell yeah. But the spell book is burned up, her house is on fire, completely destroyed, and back to negative square one, pretty much. So Elvira's feeling hopeless, back to negative square one, no money, no spell book anymore, and her house is burned down, so she can't sell that. Even though Vincent's gone, things are not looking up. Well, to make matters worse, here comes an angry mob of townies. But wait, they're not an angry mob, they're an apologetic mob. And they show up to tell her how sorry they are, and how they misjudged her, and how she should just forgive them for literal attempted murder. Okay. Well, their apology is all fine and dandy, but Elvira still has no money for Las Vegas. Or does she? Because turns out with her uncle dead, she is the only living relative to inherit his estate. So Las Vegas, here she comes. Movie ends with this big fun Vegas number. She gets everything she ever dreamed of, and that's the movie. Don't you just love happy endings in movies? God, get your mind out of the gutter. So let's talk about it. I love this movie. Was that not obvious? I do. It's very special to me, and despite what critics say, I do think it's a well done movie. But yeah, let's get to what the critics say, because, oh boy, with just a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes with an audience score of only 66%. Again, I've never been pulled for Rotten Tomatoes, or else these scores, they would be a lot different. It's safe to say this movie was a bust. I mean, it flopped. Like, okay, go enjoy whacking off to Citizen Kane film critics and people at Rotten Tomatoes. I'm actually going to enjoy my life and watch fun movies. Thank you. But numbers at the box office also were not great. With a budget of $7.5 million, the movie only grossed $5.5 million. Cassandra Peterson blames this on the fact that the distribution company for the film went out of business the literal day before the film was released. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark was supposed to be released in 2,500 theaters nationwide, but with this whole dilemma going on, it only got released into 500 theaters, so that's not exactly a fair fight. Cassandra Peterson was even nominated for a Worst Actress Razzie for the film, which she lost to Liza Minnelli. So, like, can we really take the Razzies seriously? Oscar-winning actresses and actors are nominated for the Razzies constantly. Like, wasn't it Halle Berry who showed up to accept her Razzie with her Oscar? So, do with that information what you will. But Peterson said about the thing something like, dang, I can't even win Worst Actress. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark was the late night horror hostess's hard to say. Late night horror hostess's first foray to the big screen, with the NBC president, who is what distributed the movie, urging her to do a sitcom instead. Peterson was dead set on doing a movie, thinking if she went to a sitcom now, she would not get the opportunity to do a movie later in life, so she kept pushing and pushing, and finally NBC signed a deal for the movie, a subsequent sequel, and a TV show later to come. However, Brad Tartikoff, who was the president of NBC at the time and a big backer of Elvira, he ended up leaving the network before her TV show could ever even come to fruition. And we could do a whole separate video on her ill-fated sitcoms. Let me know if you'd like to hear about that. So we're going to get back to talking about the movie now, but that gets me heated. So Cassandra Peterson, along with her longtime friend and collaborator John Paragon, who you may know from Pee-wee's Playhouse, with Sam Egan, they all wrote the script. Peterson, who was good friends with Paul Reubens, you know, Pee-wee Herman, she kind of wanted to go the same direction as Pee-wee's Big Adventure and have Tim Burton direct the film. However, Tim Burton, he was tied up with a little-known project. I don't know if you've heard of it, Beetlejuice. I wonder if anything ever came of that. So he was unavailable, so Tartikoff brought on Signorelli to direct. Now, this man only had one directing credit under his belt, but he was successfully churning out a lot of sketches, a lot of their little parody commercials over at SNL, so he showed promise. Remember, this was the 80s, so SNL was still funny, so this was a good sign. Now with the cast, we kind of have a callback to what I was talking about in my Lords of Salem video, which if you haven't seen that after this one, you should go check it out. But what I'm talking about is an actor, director, writer, producer, there's hair in my mouth, getting together a cast of people that they have worked with before many, many times, because, you know, it just produces great results. So a lot of the cast members that you see in this movie were members of the Groundlings, which was a comedy troupe in LA that Cassandra Peterson was a part of. Edie McClurg is one of those people, and Paul Reubens, he was a Groundlings member and was supposed to have a cameo in the movie, but he was too busy with Big Top Pee-wee, so instead of a cameo, we got a little Pee-wee Herman doll sitting in Elvira's dressing room in the beginning of the movie. Haha! He's here. Pee-wee's here. Oh my god. Also, fun fact, the cop that pulls her over in the beginning of the movie is played by a man named Bill Cable, who was one of Cassandra Peterson's ex-boyfriends. She lived with him in a tree for a year. This woman has the most fascinating life. Go read her autobiography, Yours Cruelly, if you haven't yet. Fascinating. Yeah, a whole tree. Yep. The part of Uncle Vincent was actually specifically written for Vincent Price. Cassandra Peterson was a longtime admirer of Vincent Price and his work, and they eventually became friends. But he actually passed on the movie because of the raunchy script, which I never pegged Mr. Price for a prude, but hey, to each their own. But she really loved this man. They had a good friendship, and she even had a dog at one point named Vincent, who she called Vinny the Pea, after Vincent Price. Now, when it came to casting Bob, the original himbo, they had a hard time finding someone who could just body that essence. They went through many, many, many guys, just like my ex-boyfriend, before finally landing on Daniel Green, who absolutely nailed his audition. It also helped to really get him the role because during his audition, Cassandra Peterson cracked kind of a dirty joke, and his genuine reaction was just, huh? And they were like, that's Bob, that's him. Fun fact, Brad Pitt. He was unknown at the time and actually auditioned for one of the teenage boys. He did not get the role because he was too hot. What a way to get rejected. No, I'm sorry, you're too good looking. Sorry. Like, I'd be okay with that. Maybe that's why I get no matches on graveyardmeat.com. Despite being exhausted from most of filming because she was in almost every single scene, Cassandra Peterson really gave this movie 110%. And even though every movie has its challenges, it was your typical Hollywood shoot, one she would look back on fondly while filming her next film, Elvira's Haunted Hills, which was not the same shooting-wise at all. They filmed it in Romania, and apparently filming in Romania means you get jack shit. You don't get nothing, and it's difficult. Like, that's not my words, Romania. I think you're a lovely country, but apparently that's the case if you film there. But the one big challenge for Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, was the burning at the stake scene, mostly because her dress had to be doused in flame retardant, which was very, 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 very itchy. And she was tied to that post, so she could not scratch at all. She said that was pure agony. But another challenge was Binny, the dog who played Gonk, who apparently was a little bit of a diva. Binny only liked his trainer. He did not like anyone else on the set, would only listen to his trainer, was only affectionate with his trainer. He would constantly mess up scenes. He would never hit his marks. And he even bit Kurt Fuller, the man who played the realtor, on the ankle and left scars. Like, come on, Binny. Which, post-production, what we see in the movie, you would have no idea. I'm always constantly impressed by Gonk's performance in the movie, but I guess I should be more impressed with how the editors were able to pull all of that together. Another challenge with Binny was the dye, because he gets a whole punk-looking makeover. Well, Cassandra Peterson, being a major animal lover and animal rights activist, would not allow them to use any sort of permanent dye on the dog. So they had to use a vegetable dye, which would fade every single day, need to be retouched every single day. I'm sure Binny just loved that. Despite poor critical reception, the movie and Elvira herself have a big cult following, and obviously it's a big favorite of mine. I love this movie. I think it's great. If I'm feeling down for any reason, I can throw this on and start feeling better almost right away. If it wasn't obvious by everything about me, I love Elvira / Cassandra Peterson. She's a big inspiration to me, and I look at her career as an inspiration and also an aspiration of what I would like to grow to be at some point. Don't worry, I'm not going to get too sappy on you here and just wax poetic about Elvira. I'm not going to do that, but sometimes we get a little bit serious. This movie helped to propel Elvira out of the late night horror lineup and into the mainstream. And this movie does what it sets out to do, which is entertain you, be funny, and put Elvira in the spotlight. Now, if you're looking to like rank this movie amongst the elevated horror like Hereditary or Possession, obviously that's not the case. There are different types of horror movies. This is a horror comedy and it fits perfectly into that category. You're not getting some groundbreaking Ari Aster mind fucked out of this. And if that's the only type of movie you like, go do something fun. Like, are you okay? But it is ironic how Elvira kind of got her start, hosting these schlocky B-movie horror films, and many people believe that what she created was a schlocky B-movie horror film. Not my words, other people's words. And I love how this movie is sort of a callback to those funny B-level horror movies of the past. But all in all, Cassandra Peterson, she is a funny person who has funny friends, and they know how to write a funny movie, and I think they executed it perfectly. And this is the perfect kind of movie if you're wanting to inch into the horror genre, but you're a bit scared to dive in head first. Would definitely recommend this. It falls in alongside those perfect spooky, not scary movies like The Addams Family, Beetlejuice, Coraline. Wait, I take that back because Coraline is actually terrifying. Now this is where I'm going to end the discussion, simply because if I keep sitting here, we're going to veer past just the movie Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and I'm just going to keep talking about Elvira all night, and we're going to be here for 2+ hours, and I don't think my little camera or your brains can handle that. However, if in the future you would like a video of me talking about Elvira, her career, how she got started, anything like that, let me know, because I got you covered. And while you're down in the comments, let me know your thoughts on this movie. Love it? Don't love it? You won't hurt my feelings too bad if you don't love it. I'm just gonna cry about it later. I'm just kidding. Like I always say, we can agree to disagree. These are horror movies. They are not human rights. It's okay if we have a difference of opinion. Thank you guys so much for watching today. If there's a movie you are just busting out of your skin wanting me to talk about, let me down in the comments below. And if I've gotten you in the mood for more spooky content between my uploads, you can check me out on Instagram and TikTok at its_Haley Adams. And if you were wanting more Elvira content, I've been known to cosplay her a time or two, just a few times. Not frequently or anything, just like a few times. But you can find that on the aforementioned socials. But until next time, my horror hounds, I will be seeing you in your dreams. Sleep tight. Chastity Pariah, that's a person, not an STT.